The Millionaire CEO said he'd have a baby with someone else. A year later, he saw her with triplets. The world didn't just react, it exploded. Overnight, one podcast turned San Francisco upside down, shattering reputations, crushing empires, and dragging every secret into the light. And in the middle of that storm stood Maya, holding the truth that could end careers, save her children, and rewrite her destiny. But this time, everyone was watching. Hey, beautiful souls. I'm your storyteller, James. Welcome back to another journey of emotions, courage, and those truths we often hide in the deepest corners of our hearts. If you're here today, I want you to know this space is yours. A space to feel, to breathe, to heal, and to remember that no story is ever too heavy when we share it together. Before we begin, take a second. Place your hand on your heart. Feel that beat? That's strength. That's purpose. That's the reason you're here. And if you're new to this family, my beautiful soul, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our growing circle of love and storytelling. Because every chapter we tell here is stitched with emotion, faith, and hope. All right, let's dive in. The city glittered like a living constellation beneath their penthouse windows, the Golden Gate Bridge stretching across the darkness like a golden promise the world had written for two people who were meant to be in love. But inside the honeymoon suite, that promise died before it ever touched the air. The silence was cold, sharp, almost metallic, quiet enough to hear a heart cracking open. Maya stood in the center of the room, the long lace of her wedding gown pooling around her feet, like a fragile dream collapsing at the edges. The gown smelled of roses, soft vanilla, and every hope she had stitched together while convincing herself that this marriage, this union, held a chance at something real. Her fingers trembled as they clutched the bouquet ribbon she still hadn't loosened. Her pulse fluttered like a frightened bird trapped in her chest. Across the room, Ethan stood facing the floor-to-ceiling window, loosening his tie with the calm precision of a man reviewing tomorrow's board meeting, not the man who had just sworn lifelong vows hours earlier. The contrast between them was cruel. She looked like love. He looked like a deadline. Ethan didn't turn when he spoke. He didn't soften. He didn't hesitate. His voice cut through the room like a blade made of ice. Let's get one thing straight, Maya. Just 6 words. Yet her breath halted mid-inhale. Something inside her curled away as if bracing for impact. He continued in the same cool, even tone. I'll fulfill the responsibilities of this marriage. The pause. The way his jaw clenched. The way he nearly flinched at the word marriage. It was enough to make her stomach twist. He inhaled like the next part disgusted him. But I will never have children with you. The words didn't echo outward. They echoed inside her, bouncing painfully around the place she kept all the dreams she had never voiced. The shock made her chest tighten until she felt she couldn't breathe. Her ears buzzed as though someone had set off a siren in her skull. Only then did Ethan finally turn. His blue eyes weren't hateful. She almost wished they were. They were empty, devoid of warmth, of tenderness, of anything resembling the man she thought she could learn to love. The mother of my children, he said slowly, each word deliberate, will be Lila. Her heartbeat stumbled, once, hard. Lila. The name alone sliced through her. Lila, the socialite polished by money, spotlight, and a perfect reputation. Lila, the woman paparazzi adored. Lila, the one Victoria Hargrove, Ethan's mother, had once smiled about at a gala, whispering, "Now that is a woman worthy of our legacy." Maya swallowed against the dryness in her throat. Her voice came out softer than she intended, wrapped in disbelief. You had an affair while we were engaged." Ethan exhaled a short, humorless laugh. "Don't make it dramatic. Lila and I were together long before you were thrown into the merger package." Merger package. Thrown. Not chosen. Not loved. Just placed. The words slammed into her with the force of a wave breaking against stone. Her knees weakened, the room spinning just a little, but she fought to stay upright, because falling would feel like surrender. "So I'm a contract?" she whispered. He shrugged as if she had finally caught up to reality. "You're a solution. Your parents needed saving. My company needed stabilizing. My mother arranged everything." Everything inside her recoiled. This wasn't a confession, it was a dismissal. She shook her head slowly, pain carving itself into her voice. "But you married me." "For business," he replied without blinking. "Not love, and definitely not children." He stepped closer, too close, and the scent of his cologne, sharp and expensive, filled her lungs until they burned. His tall frame towered over her, shadow swallowing the soft glow of their wedding suite. Then his voice dropped, low and threatening. "If you ever try to get pregnant with my child, don't." Her lips parted, grief and shock colliding. "Ethan, why would you say something so cruel?" He leaned in, his breath brushing her cheek, his tone a quiet devastation. "Because a woman like you will never carry the Hargrove legacy." It wasn't just cruel, it was annihilating. She didn't try to stop the tears. They slid down her cheeks silently, warm trails against the cold expression on Ethan's face. He didn't flinch. He didn't soften. He didn't even look at her long enough to register her pain. Instead, he turned away, walked toward the door, paused only to fix his cufflinks. No backward glance, no explanation, no remorse. The man she married left her standing in lace and heartbreak on the first night of a marriage that already felt like a funeral. Outside, the sky erupted with fireworks, gold, purple, and red blooming over San Francisco like the world was celebrating them. Inside, something inside Maya cracked so deeply she was afraid it would never heal. She wrapped her arms around herself, the silence closing in as the city cheered outside. The bouquet petals at her feet trembled in the breeze coming from the slightly open balcony door. Her voice came out in a whisper she didn't intend. "What did I do to deserve this?" The moonlight didn't answer. The walls didn't answer. Ethan didn't answer. But something beneath her ribs felt different. An ache, a whisper, a flutter she didn't understand yet. The universe had already begun rewriting her story. Maya touched her stomach, unaware that 3 tiny heartbeats had already begun forming in the silence Ethan left behind. 3 lives he swore he'd never give her. Palo Alto mornings were supposed to feel warm, gentle, and full of promise. But Maya woke each day feeling like the sun had forgotten her room. Light poured across the mansion's clean lines and tall windows, yet not a single ray touched her heart. She moved through the halls like a shadow, careful, quiet, hoping silence would stop her from breaking. Days blended into weeks, each one colder than the last, despite California's bright skies. Ethan's presence became an occasional flicker, not a part of her life. His keycard beeped at the door past midnight, his footsteps steady and unhurried. He didn't bother hiding the scent on him. Lila's perfume always arrived before he did, that sharp, expensive sweetness that clung to his suits, his skin, even the air he walked through. It felt like the ghost of another woman haunting Maya's home. He barely offered a glance when he passed her in the hallway. A nod, a grunt, sometimes nothing at all. And when he did speak, the words were clipped, cold, delivered like a CEO delivering a verdict. She slept alone. She ate alone. She breathed alone. Victoria, however, was everywhere. Her polished heels struck the marble floors like a steady warning, each tap slicing through the stillness. She showed up unannounced, carrying judgment the way others carried handbags. Her eyes traveled over Maya's face, her clothes, her posture with the sharp precision of someone searching for flaws. "Smile," Victoria said one afternoon, her tone as smooth as ice. "You're representing a dynasty now. Don't embarrass yourself." Maya tried to lift the corners of her mouth, but they fell as quickly as they rose. The effort exhausted her. Victoria's eyes narrowed, displeased but unsurprised, as if Maya's sadness inconvenienced her. That night, Maya walked past the study and froze. Victoria stood inside with the door half open, phone pressed to her ear. Maya wasn't meant to hear anything, but some things weren't meant to be ignored. "If she ever gets pregnant," Victoria murmured, voice syrup sweet but laced with poison, "we'll declare her unfit. Her background alone is enough to challenge custody. We'll take the child immediately." The words slammed into Maya like a cold iron gate. She clutched the wall, her breath catching. Unfit? Because she wasn't wealthy? Because she wasn't white? Because she hadn't been born into the right zip code? Victoria's voice dropped even lower. "A Hargrove heir needs purity, discipline, image. She can provide none." Maya stepped back before her legs gave out. She staggered down the hall, hands shaking, stomach twisting. Everything blurred, the lights too bright, the floors too cold. She managed to reach her room before she fell to her knees and threw up twice, once from the fear clawing inside her, once from the nausea she'd been ignoring for days. By midnight, her trembling hands held a test. One pink line appeared instantly, then another, then another. Triplets. 3 small signs spreading across the test strip, 3 undeniable truths forming beneath her heartbeat. Her breath hitched, her chest tightened, tears fell, splashing across the cold bathroom tiles. They weren't the tears of a defeated woman. They were the tears of a mother who suddenly understood she was no longer alone. Inside her, 3 fragile sparks had chosen her, 3 tiny lives that carried her strength, her warmth, her blood. "Oh, babies, my sweet babies," her voice broke between sobs. "I will protect you. I promise. I don't care what it costs." She pressed her palm to her stomach, her hand trembling fiercely. For the first time since the wedding, she felt something that wasn't despair. It was small, flickering, but real. Purpose. The days that followed sharpened her instincts. The mansion's walls, once intimidating, now became a grid of exits, hiding places, and listening points. She became observant, alert, silent. She started documenting everything, but not out of spite, out of necessity. Ethan's absences were easy. They were constant. His messages, cold, curt, transactional, stacked up in her phone like receipts of a marriage built on convenience, not care. Victoria's comments were harder to capture, but Maya managed. A few recorded whispers, a couple of disguised cameras, screenshots of emails sent from private accounts. And then Lila. The first time Maya caught her on camera was at 2:14 a.m. A tall figure slipped through the back entrance of the mansion with practiced ease. Maya zoomed in, Lila's signature coat, her unmistakable silhouette, her confidence as she walked down the hallway of another woman's home. Maya saved the footage. Her heart beat fast every time she stored a new file. She didn't know what, exactly, she was building, but she felt the tension in her bones. She felt the danger. She felt the need to gather proof, to create a shield before anyone tried to take what belonged to her heart. The mansion started to feel like a house built entirely of glass, beautiful from the outside, sharp and dangerous within. Every room held a secret. Every shadow carried a lie. Every whispered conversation pressed against her like it wanted to break her. But she didn't break. She started keeping a small notebook hidden beneath the false bottom of her vanity drawer. Dates, times, words, names. Silence had been her prison, but information was her weapon. She learned the camera's blind spots. She watched for patterns in Ethan's movements. She memorized Victoria's voice when she lied. She discovered the hidden safe behind Ethan's office bookshelf, and she found the password he used when he rushed, the one tied to childhood memories he didn't think anyone remembered. One night, long after the mansion had quieted and the city lights had dimmed, Maya slipped into Ethan's office. Her hands shook, but her eyes were steady. She plugged in a small drive, backing up audio files, screenshots, videos, everything she had gathered. Her heart thundered inside her ribs. Sweat slid down her spine. She whispered to her babies, a soft, steady promise. Just a little longer. I'm doing this for you. The progress bar moved slowly across the screen, each second stretching like an eternity. She checked the hallway once, twice, 3 times. Silence. Then, suddenly, the familiar beep of the keycard, the soft hiss of the office door unlocking, a shadow falling across her back. Ethan stepped inside, eyes narrowing as the screen's glow illuminated Maya's terrified face, and the files she had gathered were still open, still visible, still downloading. The office smelled faintly of polished wood and old leather, a scent Ethan seemed to carry wherever he went. Maya froze in place, her hand tightening around the small flash drive as though it were the only thing keeping her tethered to sanity. The room felt smaller than it had ever been, the walls leaning in, echoing every heartbeat that thundered in her chest. "What are you doing in my office, Maya?" His voice was cold, sharp enough to slice through bone. It wasn't angry, it wasn't even questioning. It was a warning. Her lips parted, words caught in the web of panic. I was just looking for the Wi-Fi password," she stammered, and the sound of her own voice made her stomach churn. Ethan crossed the room in a few long strides, arms folded, jaw tight, eyes searching her face as if trying to read every secret she had ever kept. "You've been acting strange," he said slowly, each word deliberate, each syllable heavy with suspicion. Maya's pulse accelerated, her palms sweating against the smooth plastic of the flash drive. He stepped closer, too close, and her breath hitched. The air between them was electric, dangerous, suffocating. "You're not pregnant, are you?" His voice dropped, almost a growl. The intensity in his eyes made the room spin. Her stomach tightened violently. She forced herself to meet his gaze, to maintain some semblance of control. "Of course not," she whispered, a shaky lie that barely disguised the truth. He narrowed his eyes, blue ice boring into her chest. "You better not be." Her heart stopped. It wasn't the threat alone, it was the way he looked at her, like the world itself had become a test, and she was already failing. For a brief, fleeting second, she saw something in him. Fear. Not real fear, not terror, but an edge of apprehension, a flicker of awareness that the consequences of her choices might reach farther than he imagined. She swallowed hard, forcing a shaky smile. Then, as if summoned to remind her of everything she had been trying to avoid, the door opened. Lila. She walked in as if she owned the air in the room, tossing her hair with calculated nonchalance. She wore Ethan's hoodie, casual and intimate in a way designed to provoke. Her smirk was precise, polished, perfected over years of practice. "Maya, honey," she said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "You look pale. Problems at home?" Maya turned her gaze away, clutching the flash drive against her chest like it was a lifeline, the only thing keeping her from collapsing in rage and despair at the audacity standing in front of her. That night, her hands shook as she booked secret prenatal appointments under a name she borrowed from a friend, one that wouldn't trigger any alarms. Every click of the keyboard was a quiet act of rebellion, a small step toward reclaiming what was hers. Marcus, Ethan's father, had accidentally discovered her ultrasound photos during one of his rare visits. She had expected judgment, exposure, confrontation. Instead, he had placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, eyes soft but unwavering. "They're your army," he whispered, his voice steady and warm. "And you will win." Those words lodged themselves in her chest, fueling a fire she had tried to keep smoldering quietly beneath layers of fear and heartbreak. Courage began to bloom, fragile but insistent, taking root where doubt had lived for weeks. Later, in the dark of the nursery, she worked alone, bathed in the pale glow of her laptop screen. The triplets' future depended on what she was about to create. Every line of code she typed, every document she backed up, every secret she catalogued. It was all part of a plan. She started the first prototype of TruthLink, her secret app, built to expose corruption, lies, and cruelty. It wasn't just a project, it was a shield, a weapon, and a promise to herself and the children she carried. The nursery felt sacred in the quiet of the night. Toys lay untouched, a mobile of stars spinning lazily above the crib, while Maya hunched over her laptop, tapping keys with relentless precision. Her fingers ached, her eyes blurred, but she did not stop. She catalogued Ethan's absences, his cold messages, the subtle cruelty in his tone that he thought no one noticed. She saved screenshots of Victoria's remarks, each one sharper than the last. Hidden camera footage captured Lila moving through the mansion as if she belonged, a silent predator in the gilded halls. The mansion itself seemed alive, each corridor and corner whispering lies, each polished surface reflecting a truth that no one wanted to admit. Maya navigated it all like a ghost, unseen but vigilant, aware that one misstep could destroy everything. Her mind moved faster than her body, planning every contingency, predicting every lie, anticipating every betrayal. She was no longer just a bride. She was a mother. She was a strategist. She was a woman who refused to be broken twice. Hours blurred into early morning. Shadows shifted across the walls as she leaned back, eyes heavy but burning with determination. Every keystroke was a promise to protect her children, to survive, to make sure no one could claim them or her dignity. The house remained quiet, too quiet, as if aware of the storm growing inside her. The faint hum of the city below seemed distant, irrelevant. Upstairs, the lights of Ethan's office flickered as she worked, a sentinel of truth in a house built of secrets. She paused for a moment, resting her forehead against the laptop screen, heart pounding, breath uneven. The weight of the pregnancy pressed down, but she ignored it. Every pang, every ache, every anxious thought only strengthened her resolve. Maya's mind wandered briefly to what the future could bring. Confrontation, exposure, scandal. But she knew she could survive it all if she kept moving forward, if she trusted her instincts, if she trusted herself. Outside, the first light of dawn began to touch the horizon. Golden rays stretched through the curtains, illuminating dust motes dancing lazily in the air. But they could not touch the shadows gathering in her chest, the tension coiling like a snake. She shut the laptop for a moment, closing her eyes and pressing her hand to her stomach. The little flutter of life beneath her palms was fragile, sacred, urgent. She whispered promises, vows, declarations that had nothing to do with Ethan, nothing to do with anyone else. Only the 3 tiny hearts she would protect with everything she had. The sound of footsteps on the carpet made her freeze, each beat closer, heavier, inevitable. Her fingers went instinctively to the flash drive in her pocket. Her breath caught as the office door swung open. A sharp, sudden pain shot through Maya's belly, followed by a warm, alarming streak of blood, and she realized in horror that danger was no longer only in the shadows. It had arrived. The moment the pain struck, it was like the world itself had turned jagged and sharp. Maya's legs buckled beneath her, her body folding in on itself as the warmth of blood spread across the pristine white tiles of the nursery. Every breath came jagged, a harsh, ragged whisper that tore through the still night. "No, babies, please," she sobbed, each word broken, choked, soaked in terror. Her hands trembled, leaving red streaks along the tile as she crawled toward the phone. Each movement was agony, a reminder that the life she carried hung in fragile balance. Her fingers found the phone, dialing the only number she trusted, Marcus. She didn't care about appearances. She didn't care about being composed anymore. The digits pressed against her fingers like a lifeline. "Marcus, help." Her voice cracked, a mere breath of desperation. Within moments he was there, his car slicing through the silent streets of Palo Alto like a guardian angel racing against fate. He never spoke a word of judgment, only silent urgency, gripping her hand as if his presence alone could tether her to hope. "Stay with me, Maya," he whispered, voice steady, unwavering, carrying the weight of everything she feared. "They need you." The hospital doors opened like a threshold to chaos. Doctors' shouts and nurses' rapid footsteps collided in a cacophony that blurred into a white-hot anxiety. "Triplets, high risk, prepare or—" The words hammered her brain. She tried to focus, tried to breathe, tried to believe that she wasn't about to lose everything she had just begun to protect. Marcus never left her side, his hand warm around hers, his presence a fragile tether to the world outside the storm of pain. The minutes stretched like hours. Each second was infinite, each heartbeat a drum of terror and hope intertwined. Her eyes clenched shut against tears, against the fear that clawed at her from inside. Every contraction, every spasm of pain was a reminder that life was fragile, cruel, and precious all at once. Finally, the storm eased. The spinning lights of the hospital corridor blurred into the dim quiet of recovery. Hours later, Maya woke in a pale, dimly lit room. Her body ached, every muscle screaming. But beneath her hands, the steady, rhythmic flutter of 3 tiny heartbeats brought tears she couldn't hold back. She cried, loud, raw, unrestrained. She cried because they lived. She cried because she had survived the impossible. She cried because love had fought in silence and darkness and emerged victorious. Marcus sat beside her, eyes soft but proud, a quiet presence that held her in ways Ethan never could. "They're fighters," he said gently, voice carrying both reverence and warmth. "Just like you." For a moment, relief washed over her like sunlight after a storm. She allowed herself to breathe, to feel, to imagine the little lives growing stronger inside her, the ones she had already begun to love more fiercely than she ever imagined possible. But relief was a fragile illusion. The door opened. Victoria. She glided in, heels clicking against the floor, the sound sharp, deliberate, like a countdown. Her eyes, cold and calculating, swept over Maya with the satisfaction of someone who knew she had just delivered a blow to someone's world. "Having secret medical emergencies?" Victoria's tone was icy, detached, practiced. How irresponsible. Maya's hands tightened around the sheets beneath her. Her body ached, her heart still racing, but rage now mingled with exhaustion. Victoria's lips curled into a small, cruel smile. "Maybe motherhood isn't for you after all." The words slid into Maya's bones like venom. She clenched her fists beneath the sheets. "Stay away from my children," she said, voice low, trembling, but laced with unbreakable steel. "They're not yours alone," Victoria replied, her voice soft but lethal, deliberate in its cruelty. "They're Hargrove's, and they belong to the legacy." Maya felt her stomach tighten, fury coiling like fire. The threat was clear. Victoria didn't just want control. She wanted to erase everything Maya had fought to protect before it had even begun. For a moment, the room felt suffocating, heavy with the weight of power, wealth, and twisted obsession. The quiet hum of the monitors was a cruel reminder of how fragile her grip on the world really was. Maya's mind raced. She had survived Ethan's betrayal. She had survived Lila's manipulations. But Victoria was a storm she hadn't anticipated. She needed to act, to prepare, to find a way to keep her children safe from a woman who would stop at nothing. Every decision, every step, now carried the weight of 3 innocent lives. Every move had to be calculated. Every ally, every tool, every ounce of courage had to be deployed. She had no margin for error. The rest of the day blurred. Nurses came and went, offering instructions and smiles that couldn't pierce the shadow hanging over her. Marcus remained ever watchful, his quiet guidance steadying her nerves. His presence reminded her that she was not entirely alone, that there were people willing to fight alongside her when the time came. Back in the mansion, the echoes of the hospital lingered like ghosts. Maya returned cautiously, still fragile from the ordeal, still trembling from adrenaline and pain. She walked slowly, every step a careful measure of strength. The house, once merely cold, now felt like a battlefield where every polished surface hid potential danger. She entered the living room, eyes scanning for threats, hands instinctively gripping her coat. And then she saw it. A document lay on the table, pristine, official, and horrifying. Victoria's signature glared at her from the top in black ink, bold and commanding. A custody petition. Maya's breath hitched. Her pulse surged. Every instinct screamed danger, betrayal, and war. She felt cornered, but beneath that, a fire burned, steady and furious. Her children, her triplets, were not just her hope. They were her purpose, her reason to fight harder than she had ever fought before. The petition was a challenge, a threat, and a signal that the battle for her children had just begun. Maya stared at the custody petition on the table, her hands trembling, knowing that Victoria's next move could destroy everything, and realizing she would have to outsmart, outfight, and outlast her to protect the triplets she had already begun to love with all her heart. Maya sat at the edge of the couch, her hands trembling, eyes scanning the documents on the mahogany table as though they had been written in some foreign language meant to hurt her. Each page, stamped and sealed, carried accusations designed to strip her of everything she had fought for, everything she had lived for, everything she was about to become. Mental instability, negligence, endangering unborn heirs, unfit background, potential foreign influence. Her chest tightened as each phrase sunk into her bones. Her fingers flexed against the edges of the papers, nails biting into her palms, trying to hold back the storm inside. She could feel the anger building, raw and scorching, burning through every ounce of fear she had been carrying. Victoria had manufactured all of it. Fake accidents, staged photos, carefully edited videos that made Maya's life seem chaotic, reckless, and unfit for motherhood. Each frame was a lie. Each accusation was a dagger aimed straight at her heart. Lawyers loomed like vultures, shadowing her every move, cataloging her every breath, ready to turn even the simplest actions against her. Every step to the car, every whisper of conversation, every time she bent down to rub her aching belly. They were watching. Ethan didn't intervene. He didn't defend her. He didn't glance at the papers or even read the documents. His attention was elsewhere, consumed by Lila, her manipulative smile, her calculating influence. Lila's new influencer deal had him entangled, blind to the damage happening right under his nose. But cracks had begun to appear. The world outside the mansion had no idea of Maya's quiet war, no clue that the woman appearing fragile, isolated and alone was orchestrating a storm. At a major tech conference, anonymous leaks began circulating, disrupting boardrooms, shaking foundations, rattling corporate hierarchies. TruthLink, her prototype app, hidden and encrypted, had begun exposing unethical mergers, corporate bullying, bribery networks. Names that seemed untouchable now appeared in digital footprints, too clear to deny. Stock prices twitched, investors whispered anxiously. Reporters leaned closer to microphones, sensing the tremor beneath the glossy surface of Hargrove Tech. Backstage, Lila cornered Ethan, her presence sharp, predatory, her voice a low hiss, dripping with venom. "Are you losing control?" she spat, eyes flickering with fear and triumph. "Because I didn't sign up for a sinking ship." Ethan's jaw clenched. Sweat dotted his temples, his hands curling into fists as panic flickered behind the usually cold precision of his blue eyes. The empire he had built on privilege, arrogance, and manipulation teetered, threatened by something he hadn't even known existed. Maya watched from the shadows, her pregnant belly hidden beneath a long coat, hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. She was quiet, unseen, invisible to everyone but herself. The air hummed around her, electric with the tension of the moment, her heart hammering against her ribs like a battle drum. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, fingers nimble and deliberate. A new encrypted leak waited, ready to expose yet another layer of corruption and deceit. One press of her thumb, one upload into the digital world, and chaos would erupt again. She hesitated only briefly. Each second was precious. Each move could be fatal if discovered. Her mind ran 1,000 calculations in a heartbeat. She pressed the screen. Chaos erupted. Emails flew. Boardrooms panicked. Investors pulled funds. Headlines blinked across phones and screens with her name nowhere, but her influence everywhere. Hargrove Tech trembled as though some invisible hand had shaken it to its foundations. Ethan felt it first in his gut, then in the messages flooding his phone, then in the frightened eyes of his executives. He stumbled into a private office, frantically scanning news feeds, trying to understand how his empire was faltering. Meanwhile, Maya remained in the shadows, her heart pounding, breathing measured but sharp, aware of the power she now wielded. She had begun to fight, to protect, to take control, not just for herself, but for the 3 lives growing inside her. Every beat of her heart synchronized with the determination growing in her chest. Every pulse reminded her of her purpose, her mission, her unshakable will. She had survived betrayal, manipulation, and lies, and now she was weaponizing the truth against those who had sought to destroy her. The night stretched long, each passing hour a test of patience and precision. Every email sent, every file uploaded, every digital breadcrumb left for the world to find was a statement. She was not powerless, she was not silent, she was not afraid. Ethan, in the private chaos of his office, didn't notice her presence until the room itself seemed to tremble with tension. He was frantic, furious, confused, an empire in peril, a man unprepared for the reckoning coming from someone he had always underestimated. Somewhere deep inside, Maya allowed herself a small, fierce satisfaction. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. This was preparation for the battles yet to come. The mansion, once cold, now seemed alive with the invisible war she had unleashed. Every corner, every hallway, every shadowed space became a potential vantage point, a strategic point in her plan to protect her children and expose the corruption that had nearly destroyed her. Even as exhaustion threatened to drag her down, even as her body ached from pregnancy and stress, her resolve remained unshaken. She had begun to prove, to herself, to the world, and eventually to Ethan, that she was neither fragile nor powerless. The night deepened, silence punctuated by the hum of electronics and the distant city noise outside. Maya's hands hovered over her phone one last time, ready to release the next wave of disruption, her mind calculating every possible outcome, anticipating every counterstrike. She could hear the faint click of heels in the distance. Someone was coming. Perhaps a servant, perhaps a spy, perhaps the very enemy she had been evading. Her pulse quickened, her instincts sharpened, but she did not flinch. She had survived worse. She had prepared for this. Her mind ran over every scenario, every eventuality, every danger. The phone rested in her hand like a loaded weapon. Every tap, every message, every encrypted upload had consequences. But Maya was ready. And then, in a storm of footsteps, anger, and authority, the door slammed open. Ethan stood there, his eyes wide, his face a mixture of disbelief, fury, and fear. He didn't speak at first. He simply walked forward, each step heavy, deliberate, shaking the room with the force of his presence. Without a word, he slammed her phone onto the table between them, the impact reverberating like a gavel in the quiet room. "TruthLink is yours, isn't it?" Maya froze, pulse racing, realizing the moment had come. Ethan knew. He knew she had built the app. She had exposed their secrets, and the fragile balance of power between them was about to shatter completely. The room felt impossibly small, every breath thick with tension, every heartbeat echoing like a drum in Maya's chest. Ethan stood frozen, his piercing blue eyes wide with disbelief, storm clouds of confusion and anger crossing his face in impossible rapidity. The air between them was heavy, charged, alive with a truth neither could deny. Yes, Maya whispered, voice steady but low, carrying a weight that made the walls themselves seem to lean in closer. I built it. Every line of code, every exposé, every truth. Ethan blinked, like the words had hit him in a physical sense, as if each syllable was a hammer cracking the fragile veneer of his control. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came. You betrayed me. His voice was sharp, trembling, incredulous. Shock, confusion, and hurt bleeding through every word. Maya laughed, a bitter sound, dry and cutting like broken glass. I didn't betray you. I revealed you. The laughter rang through the room, hollow yet victorious. She stepped closer, eyes steady on his. Everything you thought was hidden. Every lie you told, every secret you whispered in confidence. It's out, all of it. His eyes widened further as realization began to sink in. Not slowly, not gently, but like a landslide. The leaked stories circulating in the tech world, the scandals shaking his empire. They matched his own confessions, his own missteps, the very moments he had let his guard down, thinking no one was watching. Guilt, raw and unfiltered, flashed across his face. The memory of late-night conversations, private admissions, quiet vulnerabilities now weaponized against him. Maya had taken the very ammunition he had unknowingly handed her and forged it into something unstoppable. I trusted you, he whispered, voice breaking, the carefully constructed armor he had always worn, dissolving in a moment of true reckoning. No, Maya said softly, each word deliberate, unwavering. You used me, and I learned to use the truth. The atmosphere shifted suddenly. Red and blue lights streaked across the mansion's polished floors, sirens shrill and urgent, echoing through the night. Police cars had arrived, cutting through the tension like a blade. Victoria stormed into the room, pale, her carefully maintained composure unraveling under the weight of what had just happened. Panic sharpened her features, eyes wide and unseeing as she stammered, "They're here for me." Maya held up her phone, the small device glowing with the promise of exposure. "I exposed your embezzlement, your fraud, your racism, your illegal surveillance. All of it is live right now, on TruthLink." Victoria's scream tore through the air, raw and desperate, a sound that seemed to shake the very walls. Agents moved quickly, precise, efficient. They grabbed her, dragging her out as her cries echoed through the mansion, leaving only silence in her wake. Ethan collapsed onto the stairs, shoulders hunched, head in his hands, shaking as if the world itself had just fallen on him. The carefully maintained control he had wielded like a weapon was gone, replaced by a helplessness he had never known. "Maya, what have I done? To you? To us?" His voice cracked, the first true display of vulnerability she had ever seen in him. For the first time, she saw real fear in his eyes, not the controlled arrogance, not the icy charm, not the detached calculation, just fear. Fear of losing everything, fear of exposure, fear of realizing that he had underestimated her in every way. The mansion was quiet, but the tension lingered, thick and unbroken. Every shadow seemed to move with the memory of Victoria's screams, every corner carrying the weight of the digital storm Maya had unleashed. She didn't speak immediately. She let him feel it, the crushing reality of his mistakes, the ripples of destruction that now surrounded him, and the strength she had forged from the crucible of betrayal and pain. Ethan's blue eyes lifted, searching her face for any sign of the woman he had once thought was fragile, pliable, and dependent. He found none. Only a quiet, unwavering resolve stared back, a storm contained in human form, and it frightened him more than any scandal, any public humiliation, or any financial loss ever could. Her hand rested instinctively on her belly. She could feel the gentle, urgent movements of the triplets, the life she had carried through storms, through betrayal, through pain, and now through victory. Ethan's voice broke through the tense silence again. "Maya, please, The words were swallowed by an unignorable, undeniable new reality. A sudden gush, warm and urgent, stole her breath away. Pain flared in her lower belly, sharp, immediate, terrifying. She gasped, clutching her stomach, eyes wide, breath ragged. The triplets were coming early. Ethan, startled and terrified, moved toward her instinctively. "No, no, wait. Stay with me. Please don't leave me, not now." His hands shook as he tried to reach her, trying to steady what couldn't be stopped, frantic and desperate. The house transformed instantly. The mansion, once a battlefield of secrets, manipulation, and silent wars, now became a place of raw, urgent life. Every moment counted, every second mattered. The stakes were no longer corporate or political. They were human, vulnerable, and sacred. Maya's eyes locked onto his, the tension between them unspoken but undeniable. The past, the betrayals, the lies, all of it condensed into a moment that could either destroy or redefine them. Her breaths were sharp and quick, each one punctuated by the violent rhythm of contractions and the unrelenting insistence of new life demanding entry into the world. Marcus appeared almost instantly, summoned in the chaos, his hands steadying her, his calm voice cutting through the panic. "Breathe, Maya. They're fighters like you. We can do this." Ethan hovered, panic battling guilt, his hands trembling as he reached to help, unsure if he had the right, unsure if he could ever redeem himself in this instant, unsure if he was even capable of being enough. The medical team had been called, and now the mansion was a flurry of controlled chaos. Phones, monitors, and adrenaline collided. Maya was aware, sharper than ever, alert to every movement, every sound, every breath that wasn't hers. Every heartbeat of her own was mirrored by the tiny flutters of life inside her, a rhythmic reassurance that despite everything, hope persisted. The night had shifted. Everything had changed. Truth had exploded. Secrets had shattered. Victoria was gone. Justice had begun. And now the triplets were about to arrive, unannounced, unstoppable, uncontainable. Ethan, kneeling beside her, finally saw the woman he had underestimated for so long, fierce, unbreakable, and more alive than he had ever imagined. And Maya, amidst pain, fear, and triumph, realized something that would shape the rest of her life. She didn't need him. She had her truth, her children, and herself. Maya's water broke violently, contractions flaring uncontrollably, and as Ethan begged, "Please don't leave me. Not now." She knew the triplets were coming, early, fragile, and unstoppable, and that nothing would ever be the same again. The delivery room was a storm of noise, light, and urgency. Machines beeped in rapid succession, doctors and nurses moved with precise coordination, and the air itself felt electric, thick with expectation and fear. Every second carried the weight of life and death. Ethan paced at the edge of the room, hands trembling, jaw tight. He had never felt this powerless. His suit was wrinkled, his hair mussed, his blue eyes wide with panic. "Please, God, let them live, please." His voice cracked, raw and desperate, a prayer he had never uttered before. Maya's cries cut through the chaos, high-pitched, raw, tearing from her lungs, each contraction racking her body with unbearable intensity. Her hands clawed at the sheets, her knuckles white, her nails digging into her palms. She did not care who saw. She did not care who judged. Every scream, every tear, every gasp of air was dedicated to the 3 lives fighting to enter the world. The doctor's voice was calm, clipped, professional, but underneath was urgency. Keep breathing, Maya. Almost there. You're doing perfectly. Time seemed to bend. Seconds stretched into eternities. The monitors blared. The alarms pulsed. The room moved in a blur, but Maya's focus was singular. The tiny lives within her, thrashing, struggling, demanding arrival. And then, the first cry. Sharp, insistent, alive. Aiden. A tiny human voice that carried fury, life, and defiance in equal measure. Maya's heart clenched, tears streaming down her cheeks, mixing with sweat, blood, and exhaustion. She could barely believe it. The second cry followed. A high-pitched, wailing announcement of existence. Bella. The third, smallest but no less fierce, a tiny declaration of persistence against impossible odds. Caleb. 3 voices, 3 declarations, 3 lives that had survived everything she feared, everything the world had tried to strip away. Her world had rebirthed itself in those cries. Ethan froze, every ounce of bravado and control he had relied on for decades crumbling. His trembling hands hovered above the babies, unable to touch, afraid to make a mistake. They have my eyes, he whispered, awe and terror colliding in a single syllable. Maya didn't answer. She could only stare at them, exhausted beyond comprehension, every muscle aching, every nerve raw. Pain, fear, love, and victory coiled inside her like fire. She had endured. She had survived. She had protected them. The medical team continued their efficient choreography, but for Maya the world had narrowed to 3 tiny bundles of life, each one a miracle, each one a testament to her resilience, each one a weapon against the injustice and cruelty that had sought to destroy her. Ethan sat down finally, hands still shaking, eyes never leaving the babies. The vulnerability in him was raw, unfiltered, a man stripped of pride, ego, and power, confronted with the pure force of life that had come through Maya's strength. Hours later, the room quieted. The triplets nestled safely in warm blankets. Maya lay back, body trembling, heart full, mind racing. She was alive. They were alive. And for the first time since the nightmare began, she allowed herself a sliver of relief. Ethan approached her bed, slow, hesitant, every step weighed with remorse. Maya. His voice was low, unsteady, saturated with humility. I don't deserve forgiveness, I know that. But please, let me try. Let me earn a place in their lives. Maya turned her eyes toward him, tired and ancient beyond her years, yet fierce with an unshakable resolve. She studied him, weighing every word, every breath, every hint of sincerity. You will never hurt them, she said, cold, unwavering. And you will never control me again. Ethan's shoulders slumped. Tears slipped freely down his face, unchecked, raw. Anything, he whispered. I'll change everything. I'll do whatever it takes. Maya's gaze softened fractionally, not enough for forgiveness, not enough to invite trust, but enough to acknowledge the possibility of change, measured, deliberate, and conditional. She had survived too much to be naive. She had fought too hard to risk being vulnerable without guarantees. Meanwhile, the world outside had not paused. Social media feeds buzzed, news channels flared with speculation, and whispers in the tech industry had already begun to circulate. Maya's fight had made waves, and now the story was poised to explode further. Ethan sat quietly, trying to process the gravity of the moment, the weight of his own failings, and the miracle of the triplets who had already begun to reshape his understanding of life, love, and responsibility. Maya, despite exhaustion, focused on the babies. Aiden's tiny hand grasped her finger instinctively. Bella cooed softly. Caleb blinked at her with wide, unseeing eyes, yet somehow already full of life and fire. Each small heartbeat, each breath, each tiny cry was a victory, a reassurance, a challenge to anyone who had sought to harm them. The delivery room, once a battlefield of pain and fear, now became a sanctuary of fragile hope, illuminated by the blinking monitors, the quiet murmur of doctors, and the low, tremulous sighs of new life. Ethan leaned closer to the incubators, fingers hovering above the blankets, as if physical contact could somehow bridge the chasm of guilt and distance between him and the children he had almost never known. Marcus remained near Maya's side, steady, calm, eyes reflecting pride and relief. "They're fighters, Maya," he said softly, voice low but firm, "just like their mother, and they'll grow strong because of you." Maya nodded weakly, lips pressing into a thin line of exhaustion and determination. The fight had been brutal, the world unkind, but she had emerged stronger, sharper, and more capable than ever. She would protect these children with every ounce of her being, no matter the cost. Even Ethan, kneeling by her bedside, understood now that the world had shifted irreversibly. The illusions of control he had relied on for so long were shattered. The children were not pawns. The empire was fragile, and Maya was no longer someone to underestimate. As night fell over the city, the hospital became a cocoon of new life, of fragile victories, and unspoken tension. Every blink of the monitors, every soft sigh of the babies, every whisper in the room reminded them all that the stakes had changed. The small room pulsed with unspoken truths, with tentative reconciliations, with fragile hope balanced against the remnants of betrayal. Maya held the triplets close, eyes closed briefly, savoring the moment, letting herself feel the exhaustion, the triumph, and the love that had carried her through the impossible. Ethan whispered again, almost to himself, almost a prayer, "I'll never hurt them. I'll never hurt you." Maya didn't answer. She didn't need to. The future would be written in actions, not words. Every decision now would be weighed against the truth she had fought to protect and the lives she had fought to save. The night stretched long, quiet outside the walls, but the world beyond the hospital doors was already alive with rumor, scandal, and exposure. And then, as the first light of dawn touched the windows, the silence was shattered by a different kind of chaos. The next day, paparazzi swarmed the hospital entrance, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward, because Lila had released a bombshell podcast titled "The CEO, the Affair, and the Secret Triplets." Maya's world, already fragile and victorious, teetered on the edge of another storm. The city was a storm. San Francisco had never seemed louder, brighter, or more chaotic. Sirens, flashing cameras, and the hum of social media alerts created a relentless pulse that reverberated through every street, every office, every skyscraper. Lila's podcast had ignited like wildfire. Every device, every phone, every news outlet carried the explosive truths she had unleashed. Ethan's affair, Victoria's crimes, the forced marriage, Maya's pregnancy, boardroom corruption. Everything was now out in the open. Headlines screamed, digital feeds flooded, and the empire he had built with precision and pride teetered on the edge of collapse. Hargrove Tech's stock plummeted. Investors panicked. Executives whispered in corridors like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Every carefully cultivated image Ethan had maintained, every veneer of control, shattered in seconds. The world had shifted, and he had no hand in the reins anymore. He stood before the cameras, trembling, a man stripped bare. His suit, once a symbol of his power, hung on him like a relic of a past life. His voice, when he spoke, cracked under the weight of truth and shame. I apologize," he said, each word deliberate, shaky. For the hurt I've caused, for the lives I've disrupted, for the deception I allowed. Maya, you did not deserve any of this. The crowd murmured, some in disbelief, some with scorn, others shocked into silence. His blue eyes darted to the cameras, searching for something he didn't even know he could find. Regret radiated from him like heat. Meanwhile, Maya's world had moved beyond whispers and shadows. She walked into the federal courthouse with calm, deliberate steps. Each footfall was measured, carrying the weight of years of struggle, sleepless nights, betrayals endured, and victories hard won. TruthLink was at her side, each exposé, each shred of evidence, a testament to her determination. Victoria tried to maintain her facade, but her composure cracked the moment she saw Maya. Every calculated smile, every icy remark dissolved under the intensity of Maya's gaze. "You cannot stop what is coming," Maya said, her voice steady, unwavering, almost soft, but it carried the force of a hurricane. Federal agents flanked Victoria, their presence quiet but undeniable. Every word she attempted to speak was drowned out by the inevitability of justice. They moved swiftly, pulling her from the courtroom mid-sentence, her shrieks echoing against marble walls that had once felt suffocating to Maya, but now resonated with triumph. The judge's gavel fell like thunder. Full custody to Maya Thompson. The father may have supervised visitation. The words were a balm, a declaration that the innocence, safety, and future of the triplets were no longer negotiable. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed relentlessly. Reporters shouted questions. The city buzzed with scandal and revelation. And amidst the chaos, Ethan approached slowly, cautiously, each step hesitant as though the ground might betray him. "Maya." His voice was raw, heavy with sincerity. "I'm so sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life proving I can be better. Not for us. For them." Maya looked at him, the weight of everything that had transpired reflected in her eyes. She saw the remorse, the cracks in his armor, the fear of losing what he had taken for granted. She nodded, small, precise, gentle. "Be a good father. That's enough." She didn't smile. She didn't forgive entirely. She offered no invitation for reconciliation, only acknowledgement that he could begin to do right by the children. Months passed. The city shifted, adapted, and moved forward. Maya had transformed her grief and fury into triumph. TruthLink had grown into a multi-million-dollar tech platform, a force for accountability and empowerment, and Maya now stood at the helm of her own empire. Golden Gate Park was alive with the laughter of children. Aiden, Bella, and Caleb toddled through the grass, hands occasionally brushing against Maya's as she walked with them. Their giggles, their innocent questions, the curiosity in their eyes, reminded her daily of the future she had fought to protect. She held their hands tightly, feeling the warmth, the heartbeat of her legacy, the living proof of her strength. She had endured betrayal, manipulation, and cruelty, yet she had emerged victorious, carrying not only her children, but the certainty that her world was built by her own hands. Ethan watched from a distance, volunteering at a startup incubator for underrepresented founders. It was his first real step toward redemption, a tangible act to begin earning the trust and respect he had once assumed he deserved. He saw Maya with the triplets, their laughter rising into the air, a living monument to resilience and love. He did not approach. He did not interfere. He had been humbled. He had learned that some victories were earned through actions, not apologies, that some respect was only reclaimed through consistency, integrity, and effort. Maya felt the wind on her face, smelled the grass, heard the joyful babble of her children. The weight of the past still lingered, but it no longer held her down. She had taken every hurt, every insult, every betrayal, and forged it into a weapon that protected her family and shaped her destiny. The city carried on around her, oblivious to the intimate battles she had fought and won. yet subtly changed by the ripples of her actions. Every passerby, every shutter click of a camera, every online article was a reminder of the storm she had survived. Ethan's presence in the distance was quiet, almost invisible, yet it was a reminder that redemption was possible, that the past could be acknowledged and learned from, that consequences were real and transformative. Maya watched her children, small hands reaching for hers, trust unshaken, love unwavering. She had built a world for them, a sanctuary, a future where they could thrive beyond the manipulations and schemes of others. She paused, looking at the horizon. Golden Gate Bridge glowing in the morning light, symbolic of what she had endured, and the bridges she had crossed to get here. It was a reminder that resilience could bend reality, that courage could carve out a path where none existed. The triplets laughed, chasing each other in circles, their innocent joy grounding Maya, anchoring her to a reality she had fought so hard to create. Ethan continued his volunteer work, a silent observer of the life he had helped shape without control, learning that redemption was an ongoing process, measured not in words but in action, consistency, and humility. Maya smiled faintly, not for him, not for anyone else, but for herself and the children she had brought safely into the world. Strength, independence, and justice had been hard won, but they were hers. The city continued around them, alive, oblivious, yet forever changed by the ripples of her victory. The story of betrayal, courage, and triumph had reached its crescendo, yet its echoes would linger, reverberating in the lives of those who witnessed, survived, and endured. Her legacy, embodied in Aiden, Bella, and Caleb, marched beside her, a constant living reminder that love, resilience, and truth could overcome even the darkest of storms. The chapter of rage and betrayal had closed. The chapter of redemption, vigilance, and hope had begun. Maya had survived, and the world had taken notice. No one could erase her victory. No one could touch the bond she had forged with her children. And no one could deny that the woman who had walked through fire now walked freely, unbroken, and unassailable. Maya's journey had been long, perilous, and fraught with danger, but she had reached a place of power, autonomy, and serenity. Every step she took from this moment forward was hers alone, guided by her courage and bolstered by the beating hearts of her children beside her. And though the shadows of the past lingered faintly, they no longer held dominion over her. Maya had reclaimed her world. As Maya watched her triplets play in the park, a notification buzzed on her phone. Another explosive revelation from Lila, targeting the remnants of Hargrove Tech. The storm was far from over, and Maya knew that even in victory, she would have to stay vigilant. Her fight wasn't just for survival anymore. It was for the legacy she had built and the lives she held in her little hands.